Attorneys for Idaho quadruple murder suspect Bryan Kohberger say the prosecution is not turning over the evidence that they're asking for, including parts of a key video that allegedly places Kohberger's car at the scene of the murders. Aaron McLaughlin has more on the case.
The court should ask itself, what is the state trying to hide here?
Bryan Kohberger's legal team blasting the state of Idaho, claiming prosecutors are withholding information the defense says they need to do their job, including key pieces of a video described in the charging affidavit that allegedly shows a car matching Kohberger's at the scene of the murders.
We've received little tiny pieces of that.
Kohberger's lawyers also arguing that an upcoming hearing to compel that discovery and more should be open to the public. Prosecutors insist it should be closed and vehemently deny that it's keeping materials from the defense.
The characterization that we are just consciously withholding information to frustrate the defense is utter nonsense. I can tell you many of the things that the defendant has tried to itemize. When we talk to our people, they say that doesn't exist.
Kohberger is charged with the murders of 4 University of Idaho students in their off-campus home: Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. A judge entered a not guilty plea on Kohberger's behalf. A year and a half on, a trial date has yet to be set. As tensions mount between the legal teams, the judge urged both sides to lower the temperature.
I don't want this pointing the fingers back and forth. You can argue all you want, but when it starts to be personal, it's destructive.
The family of Kaylee Gonsalves demanding justice, saying in a statement, "This banter has been going on for 17 months, and the case is turning into a hamster wheel of motions, hearings, and delayed decisions."
Now, the judge set the next hearing for May 14th to discuss the surveillance video and other discovery, and sided with the prosecution, ruling the hearing will be closed to the public. One of the nation's busiest highways remains closed in western Connecticut after a fiery crash. Take a look at this video. The fire erupted on the southbound lane of I-95 in Norwalk Thursday following a chain reaction crash that caused a gasoline tanker to burst into flames. Work is underway to demolish and replace the damaged bridge above the highway. The situation has created traffic headaches for hundreds of thousands of drivers. Now, no one was injured in the incident. Officials say that crews will work through the weekend in an effort to reopen the interstate by Monday morning. Well, another pharmaceutical company has reached a deal valued at more than $270 million to resolve claims that it helped fuel the deadly U.S. opioid epidemic.